Hello, it's Heidi Fisher here with the Social Enterprise Online Festival, and today I'm joined by Clara, who's going to be talking to us about work-life balance. So Clara, could you tell us a little bit about your background and experiences, please?
Yes, of course. So I have been in the social enterprise world for about 2 years now, but previous to that, my background has been in recruitment and not-for-profit. So everything from working with graphic designers and PR candidates in a very small bespoke recruitment consultancy, which is when I had my first daughter. So I went back to work as a branch manager on 4 days. So that was my first sort of release into part-time working, I suppose, and that was in 2007. And then I moved into not-for-profit and spent nearly 9 years there in a university, and that's when I had my second daughter and also again returned part-time. So through that whole experience, I've juggled what it means to be a working parent. I had really supportive environments for flexible working and work-life balance, and through that obviously experienced how other people weren't having it, managed a team working part-time and juggling everything that you have for a working parent. So pulled all that together with my project management experience, my coaching in employability and training to create what I have now through the Balance Collective.
Okay, so when we talk about work-life balance, what do we really mean?
That is a really good question, and actually for me it means something different to every person. Mm-hmm. A lot of people imagine work-life balance and almost picture a scale where it's 50-50, that 50% work and 50% everything else, and actually for me it's much bigger than that. It's about creating whatever works for you. So for some people, and as a wonderful coach talks about work-life integration, it's about making sure that you feel energized and you feel positive in whatever you're doing, and you're actually able to achieve everything you want to achieve and actually take part in everything you want to take part in. So some people, for work-life balance, that's finding a job that they're very passionate about and something that they feel like that they can bring great value to themselves. For other people, work-life balance may be earning a certain amount of money to enable them to do activities outside of their normal day job. For other people, that's working to fit around their families. So that could be doing, the 8 till 11 that some people have to do when they're looking after their family in the daytime, and everything else in between. And I think that's where my approach differs slightly, because actually it's about enabling my clients to find whatever works for them. So for some families, that's the mum not working or the dad not working, or them both working part-time, or them taking project work, so they have periods of intense work and then time when they're not working. But it's about what's working for an individual and for their family, rather than having a prescriptive definition that everybody has to adhere to.
Does work-life balance typically apply more to women than men, or?
Yeah, that is a really interesting question. It's something that actually I and a lot of people I know come across. When I was pregnant with both my girls, everybody, even before I'd had them, asked me if I was going to go back to work. That was sort of after you're having a boy or a girl. Oh, when are you going to go back to work, or are you going to go part-time? And I can't actually ever remember my husband being asked that question. It was just a prerequisite. And there's an awful lot of conversation around the mental workload that mums generally have to carry. That work doesn't stop when you get through the door. You then have, homework and play dates and renewing insurances and making sure they have the right sticky back plastic to take in. And Friday night I had to deal with my eldest getting quite upset by something that happened in secondary school, from the minute she walked through the door, and as she was walking up the pathway I was hanging up from a conversation from a business partner. It traditionally becomes a very female thing. However, what's really important for me is, for as long as we continue talking about it as a mum thing, it becomes an operational thing, or even a female thing. It becomes a gender split. So it means it's harder for men to step up to taking on board everything outside of the traditional office situation. And for me, it's really important that people realise the responsibility they have for every single facet of their life. Personally, I'm a massive control freak, so everybody that knows me knows that I have to work quite hard to delegate, because it's like, oh, it's quicker if I do it, and I just carry this around in my head, and oh, there's no point asking for that. So quite often people have to unlearn from the role models that they have and what they're told going through childhood and the expectations that their colleagues put on them and their peers and whatnot. But I think things are starting to move significantly with shared parental leave coming in, for an example, for the right for flexible working for anybody to apply to. It doesn't just become about, you know, a caring for a child, it's for everybody. So I think we're slowly getting there, but there is a stereotypical approach that it is very much female and that females have to work-life balance because they put it all on their shoulders. So I work quite hard to make it about everybody really, but there is a bias that comes into play.
Okay, that's interesting, yeah, because it does seem that it's mainly women that have to think about it at the moment. In terms of social entrepreneurs, obviously a lot of people come up with an idea for what they want to do for a social enterprise. They then want to get it started, and perhaps they might already have a job, they might have children, other outside commitments. How can they get a work-life balance and still succeed with their social enterprise?
It's interesting. That was exactly my situation. I was working 4 days a week in my management role, and then coming home and, you know, doing the family thing, and then the kids would be in bed, and then I'd start working in the evening. So for me, I think healthy work-life balance is about energising and where your energy goes. And I think it's important to make sure that everything that you do and everywhere that you put your energy is productive. And productivity doesn't just mean about money and apps and checklists, but actually it's getting you closer to where you want to be. So one thing that I say to a lot of people, especially social entrepreneurs, because we're so driven by the purpose, quite often we forget, you know, we need to make money to live. all the purpose stuff comes in, and then everything else can fall to the wayside. Is making sure you're quite clear about everything that you're doing and the purpose of it. So if it's about making money and applying to bids, then you do that. If it's about networking and building relationships, you do that. And try and blend your work. So for me, for example, I bring my children along quite often to activities. So there's a local networking group that is open to people with children. So you come along and network and the kids can play. Or sometimes I work and they sit next to me. I'm by my desk. They sit next to me and do their colouring or do their homework. So it's not compartmentalising too much, because that's when you get burnt out, because you feel like you have to only approach one part of your life at a time. Second part for me, I think it's also important, is to structure in downtime, structure in thinking times. You know, make sure that you eat, make sure that you sleep. I definitely don't agree with this whole idea of, you know, hustle for 2 years, so that, because if you hustle and hustle and hustle, you will literally collapse. You will not have the physical energy or the mental strength to do that. So it's making sure that if you're scheduling your time for work or for you know, other activities with your family, you also put into place something that's actually going to relax you. And for some people, activity relaxes you. So it could be that your relaxation point is you go swimming or you go running, or, you know, I go to a book club. You know, I don't really move any more than I have to. So sort of where I get my outside time is a book club, and that's brilliant, because I meet different people and I talk about different things and I wear a slightly different identity, you know, during that time. So it's making sure that you block that time in and it's purposeful is the most important thing, I'd say.
Okay. Is work-life balance harder with younger children? Because it seems to get easier as they get older.
I think it varies. So I've got an 11-and-a-half-year-old. So I've got one that's just started secondary school and one that's just got into year 1. And I did think the older my kids get, the easier it would be, but they need different things. I think what works better as the children get older is you can actually get them to help you a little bit more. So a perfect example is we wanted to go out for a weekend and we needed to get some stuff done, get done around the house, and, you know, tidying and straightening up and all the usual types of things. And I asked my children to help me, and the eldest one pulled a face. Well, I don't want to do it. Oh, you know, I've been working hard at school all week. I don't want to do it. So with the older one, I was able to explain, you know, either we all do it each for 20 minutes and then get out 40 minutes early, or I do it all on my own, and then you've got to sit around and wait for an hour. So as the children get older, you can actually call on them a lot more, get them to help around the house, explain what you're doing. If you're going out for the day and you get an urgent phone call that you have to take, you can say, look, 10 minutes. Well, when children are younger, they don't always understand. When children are younger, however, they can often play on their own a lot better, and they don't notice things in the same way as an older child can do. But I think there is a misconception that the older child gets the easier it gets. It doesn't, because actually what they need changes a lot more, and you're more likely to have a character that can actually debate, well, no, you need to do X, Y and Z. Well, the younger one just accepts what you say and go, okay then. But if you've got children that have always been around an entrepreneurial parent, that's their norm. And you can actually, like I say, as I said earlier, bring them on board, get them to help out and get them to understand the process, and hopefully, be a different type of role model for them going forward.
That's not quite the answer I was looking for with my 3-year-old son.
Sorry. Yeah, it's really easy. The older you get, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and with another one on the way at the beginning of next year, I'm like, oh, please make it get easier as they get older.
It changed.
Yeah. So what about people that don't have children but want work-life balance? Perhaps they're working really long hours. What kind of things can they do? Because obviously not everyone has children, not everyone's ever going to have them, but they often become addicted to working in some respects because they don't perhaps have that commitment to a child. So how can they go about getting work-life balance?
That's a really good question. I think the most important thing, and this comes to everybody really, is about boundaries. It's about ultimately identifying at what point you need to walk away. So if you're in work, for example, try not to get into the habit of presenteeism. Think about, actually, why am I still here? Why am I still doing it? Find people with similar interests to yourself. If you find that your social life revolves around work, which happens an awful lot, that's okay if you feel like that's fulfilling. And because some people are actually happy with the work-life balance they have, and I think this is a point I noted down for later. But don't judge your work-life balance on other people's expectations. If you're happy with what's happening, if you feel like you've got fulfilling relationships and purposeful work, and you're going home and you're healthy and you're well, actually it's nobody else's business to change that. However, if you're doing something that makes you unhappy, and that's the big difference. So set your boundaries. It's very, very easy to get, and I used to do this before my girls came along, to get so absorbed in what you're doing, and you look up and you hadn't realised the time. So do physical things like set a timer, set an alarm, say I want to stop work by this particular time. Set an alarm 15 minutes before you want to leave. You can start wrapping up and go. Again, book time in for yourself as well. That whatever it is that you enjoy doing, make sure it happens. Book an appointment. Make yourself accountable, either by joining a group or paying a subscription. So if you don't do something, you're wasting money. If you're in any type of position of influence and leadership in work, is make sure presenteeism doesn't become an issue. So every organisation should have some type of KPI, so that you're doing the job you need to be doing. So make sure that your outcomes focus. So it's not about you being there 12 hours a day, it's about what you're doing within the time that you're there. So encourage that to happen so that you can feel like you're quite fulfilled. And take a bit of time out just to reflect on what you want. Are you actually creating a life because of what you think you should be doing? Or are you actually creating the life because it's something that you want to do? And that's really important, because it's very easy to get wrapped into a lot of other people's expectations.
So in terms of recognising that you do or don't have a work-life balance, what kind of things would you look for in perhaps your person or your environment to say, yes, I must, or I do have a work-life balance, or hang on a minute, things aren't quite right, there's something has got to change? What kind of things would you look for in terms of signs or symptoms?
Well, psychologically and physiologically, it's burnout. So, immune system suppressed, lots of colds, lots of illness, not sleeping or sleeping too much, not having the time to eat properly, or to find those activities that support you, because actually your body will tell you that you're burning the candles at both ends a lot quickly than your mind will. So looking at things like that. A general feeling of frustration, actually. I found a lot of people that come to me for coaching, they're just frustrated about everything. Things can't happen quick enough, or things feel like they're getting in the way, and it's that underlying annoyance that you're not in control. So that's the second point. The third point is really obvious. You don't get to do stuff you want to do. And it is a case of you have to turn down invites, or you find yourself stuck in the office in not a very supportive environment, or you feel like you're frustrated and you're not actually moving forward with what you want to do. And then the fourth point slightly contradicts what I said earlier, but sometimes feedback from other people, you work too much, or I never see you, or those types of things. But quite often you'll start to find that it does creep up. So I always advocate when I'm talking to my clients around time blocking in your diary, so that you can actually manage the workload that you've got, and also spilling that out into your private life. So blocking out your lunchtime, blocking out time, with your friends. And if you find actually on a practical level that it's all work, that's quite a visual thing. But usually your body and your mind will tell you before anything else starts to happen as well.
Okay, so when someone comes to you, what kind of things would you do with them to help them to achieve work-life balance?
Okay, well, quite often every single person comes to me, we get a free call first of all, and I always ask the question, what's brought you here, and just let them talk. Because every single person's situation varies. So it could be that they feel frustrated in their career, or they're due to go back to work after a career break, and they're worried actually because life is so full, they don't quite know how they're going to fit work in as well. And the question that I ask everybody is, if you could guarantee success, and I talk a lot about this invisible magic wand, if you could magic wand, daydream, how would life be? And actually get them to start telling me what they want out of life. And then we work through on a process to make that happen. The really interesting thing actually that I find that underpins everything, especially when it comes to work-life balance, is confidence. Confidence to say no to something, or confidence to give something a go. Or a lot of people get really wrapped up in job titles and salaries. And then they feel like they can't get the work-life balance they want. They can't work part-time because they need to have a certain level of income. So it's about unpicking all of those unconscious biases and those self-limiting beliefs, and finding what somebody wants. So if somebody's ideal situation would be, I want to feel healthier, because if I was healthier, if I could be more active, I'd have more energy and I wouldn't find things so hard. So then we look at finding ways to fit that into their day. My background's recruitment and coaching and leadership, so most people come to me that it's career focused, and actually they will see the quickest way to get the work-life balance they want by changing their job. But sometimes that's not always the case, because if they're just going to repeat the behaviour that they've had in their current job, it's just going to be 18 months down the line and they're going to be having the same conversation. And that's the lovely thing about coaching. If you listen to the phrases that people use, ask them to talk through the choices they've made up until now, and ask them a few uncomfortable, challenging questions, then you'll start to unpick why they've made the decisions. Because ultimately work-life balance is about control, feeling happy with the choices that you make, and also choosing things that maybe you're not choosing up to that point.
Interesting. So any other final thoughts that you'd want to share around work-life balance?
I've jotted a few down. So I always, as I mentioned before, be quite clear about what your definition of work-life balance is. So even if you're in a partnership or a couple, make sure you're both on the same wavelength, but also you identify what you want. Because again, people chuck this term around all the time but don't always know what it means to them. And often people think about work-life balance as a negative thing, and it's about burnout. But as we've talked about, quite often work energizes people and you get quite stuck into flow, and before you know it, you've been there for 2 or 3 hours. So be aware of something energizes you, but you also need to take a step back and and make space for the things. The second point is boundaries. I always use the analogy around a brick and mortar shop. Nobody would turn up to the local shop at 11 o'clock when it's 3 hours after it's been closed and bang on the door and expect people to open up. So you need to set boundaries for yourself. So use technology. Out of office was a big thing for me this summer. I used it as a bit of a talking point, because I'd always update people with what I was doing, but people knew when I was around, when I wasn't. But also set boundaries around what you want to do. So I have a little rule, much to my husband's frustration, around the house. If it's not done by 9 o'clock, it waits and it gets done the next day, because I want to sit down and I want to read, or I want to talk, or there's other things I want to do. And think about, when it comes to whatever your work may be, in the home or outside of the home, do you actually have to do it? Does it have to be done now? Does it have to be done the way you need to do it? So really the power of delegation. And finally, I think this is something that all of us talk about, especially when it comes to social entrepreneurs. We're so driven by the social in what we do, and that could be given away. I give a lot of my time for free. Is actually, you've got to remember, you need a sustainable business. To do what you want to do for the world, you need to be able to pay yourself and pay your bills. So bear that in mind as well. It's very, very easy to get wrapped up in the lovely feel-good stuff that we all do. But actually, if you're not looking after yourself and your family, everything else is irrelevant. So those are my 3 points.
Okay, brilliant. So any other top tips that you want to share? Or?
Oh, let me think. I think I've cut it all off, really. I could be here for an hour or so. I think quite often I use very simple things around time blocking. So a lot of people want to hear the practicalities around work-life balance. So I will think about what I need to do as a to-do list in the time I have available to me. An awful lot of people,
when you talk about time blocking, is that just like saying you're blocking time out for different activities? Or
it's literally as simple as that. So say I have a working day of 6 hours, for argument's sake, school runs sort of 9 till 3. I'll think about what I need to achieve during that day and how long it will take for it to be done, and then block it out as an appointment in my diary. A lot of people, the reason they struggle the most with work-life balance is they're actually trying to do too much in a day. And it's a great technique I ask a lot of people to do, is to write down everything you expect to achieve in a day: work, personal life, sleeping, eating, commuting, all that type of stuff. Write everything you expect to do in a day in a 24-hour window, and then write how long you expect that to take next to it. And say about 95% of people that do this are trying to do more than 24 hours in a 24-hour period. So time blocking is quite useful for that. People seem to want to find the magical result for work-life balance. If I do something this way, then I'm going to have a wonderful work-life balance. And actually, the one thing that I say is it can change and it can develop depending on your life circumstances, depending on what you need to do. So for me, one big tip I find for work-life balance is actually read a lot. Find out what other people are doing and how they do it, and cherry pick what works for you and test things out. And over a bit of time, you'll start to find different techniques that work. So that's the time blocking is something that I've done for years and years. When I worked in the corporate time, my diary was not just appointments. I would actually block out dinner time, half an hour, things like that. And
that's a really good idea. It's something so simple, but such a great idea. I think one of the other things that always gets to me is to-do lists.
Yes.
To-do lists seem to be never ending, and there's always this expectation that you'll finish your to-do list and you'll get it done today. And I think for me, about a month ago, someone just said your to-do list is never going to end, and it was like somebody literally hit me in the head, and my brain started to say, yeah, actually, that's so true. My to-do list will never end. So why every day do I try to squeeze it in? So I think with something like time blocking, that would work really well, recognizing that there's only certain of those things on that list that are going to get done, and the rest will wait till tomorrow. There might be some more things that get added to it, and it will just keep going on and on forever. Yeah.
I find that quite interesting because I have I just dump everything down that I need to do, and I used to have a separate technique for home and work, but actually I just dump everything because you know, especially carry so much stuff in your head all the time. Dump it all down, and then I choose 3 to 5 things a day that are going to make a real difference. Either I have to do them, like, you know, end of year bookkeeping, that type of thing, or, you know, it's going to make a difference to my business, or it's going to make a difference to, you know, my family or the people that I'm working with. And actually 3 to 5 is quite a reasonable amount of things to do. I also draw on my project management experience. So once upon a time I took the wonderful Prince 2 qualification, and every so often that creeps up. And then actually things happen in stages. And this also happens a lot in the sort of the coaching structure. Quite often we have a to-do list, and the to-do is to finish something. And it feels so overwhelming, you're never going to get it done. Or you start it, but because you haven't finished the item, you feel like you haven't achieved everything. So to block things down. So if you know, your to-do is to set up an event, for argument's sake, the thing you want to do that day is to create the event on you know, a particular platform and get that promoted, and then the following day is then sending out to your email list, and then the following day, so all of a sudden it becomes manageable. To-do lists are the bane of my life because it's the new in thing at the moment, but it's about finding what works for you, but just being reasonable with your time and being realistic with, you know, overestimating how long it's going to take, because most people underestimate as well.
Okay. Brilliant. It's been really lovely talking to you today and finding out more about work-life balance and the ways in which we can go about achieving it. If people do want to talk to Clara any more about work-life balance and see how they can achieve it for their social enterprise, then her contact details will be underneath the interview, so you'll be able to get in touch with her. So thank you very much for joining me today. It's great to talk to you.
You too.
And you. Okay, take care. Bye.